So I gotta say, adopting Audrey, I had no idea what to expect going in, and I was very moved by it. What
Sweet.
about? Yeah, absolutely. What about it really captured your interest in wanting to be a part of it?
I felt like it was a character I had never really seen before, you know. It felt really timely, the questions that it was asking of like sort of, the product of the end of grind culture and sort of the hardcore DIYers and sort of like out of our like self resilience like mantra, what emerges, because it's not the whole conversation. Humans need far more community care, than we're even allowed in a lot of ways. And so I liked that it was exploring kind of those themes in a very subtle, you know simple way. Yeah, I thought Mike wrote a really beautiful script, so I was just happy to be a part of it.
And then on this one, this is also one of your few instances where you're also an executive producer as much as a star. And so I'm curious, what got you interested in executive producing as much as starring for it?
Well, I think sort of the funny thing that no one talks about, which I think, I can because I've been acting for so long, is that actors are producers in a way. We're sort of the head of a department that doesn't have a head, right? Each actor is the head of their own department. And in that, it requires activities of communication, collaboration with wardrobe, with hair and makeup, with the lighting department, with props. It's adding voice and direction to every single thing that you're doing. And so I think that, actors don't really get the credit, but it's sort of our job to be a part of, particularly in where you're like, okay, I think that there's this, and, to have 1,000 ideas about stuff is pretty important and also pretty regular. So sometimes now just taking on that title of producer, it allows just more space for that type of activity to grow.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. What was it like for you then getting to the heart of Audrey?
Well, what's interesting is that because I had read the script before I became a mother, and then it took a long time for it to be made. It wasn't made, and then Mike completely rewrote it and sent it to me probably like when my son was around 1.5, and I was like, oh wow, this is a real, like, you've gone deeper and done a lot of, this is almost like a whole new story, even though it was pretty much the same characters and stuff. And I had just finished doing sort of these 4 films back to back where it was like, every single character had like an accent or a wig and, all of this stuff, which I love exploring. But I realized that my growth space or my fear space as an actor at that point was doing something really naturalistic, like not hiding behind anything and really letting whatever was emerge. And so I talked to Mike about it, and I was like, I think this is the film. I think we can push into a really deeply naturalistic perspective. And he was super on board. So that's kind of how we found her and let her find herself in a way, was just me being as just raw as I possibly could.
So what would you then say were some of the biggest creative challenges for you being in that space?
Well, then I was deeply championing allowing Audrey to find her story. And then, of course, the story was developing around it. So sometimes there would be bumps in the road of like, it's hard to allow characters to kind of emerge in that way and shoot a linear shooting schedule with multiple parts and all that stuff. So I think that was probably the biggest conundrum, though also sometimes the biggest challenges provide the most opportunity to play in. So I kind of liked that as well.
So you mentioned the DIY nature of Audrey and her story. And so I'm curious, I mean, this film does see you perform a lot of different activities. How familiar were you with some of them prior to shooting?
Well, I'm exactly like Audrey. I mean, I was born in the, same generation where it's like, I feel like I could do anything if I watch a YouTube video, like I'll build a treehouse, I'll paint the thing, I'll do the stuff. Maybe now more so that I'm a mom, I feel that maybe even hyper more because I'm like, oh, we can do this. I got this. So I didn't know how to do any of those things. I sort of learned on the spot, just like she does,
Did you find that made it easier or harder for you when you were then going into the scenes to shoot?
Both, because it allows the conundrum of giant gaping mistakes in public, but then also the creative opportunity of doing something that aligns with you and finding exactly how you align with it. And that's how it works, not being like, well, someone told me to do it exactly like this, and you're trying to do it exactly like they tell you, when really maybe everyone can kind of discover how they do it themselves,
So with a film like this as well, one of the great things is to see the chemistry form between characters. And I was not expecting to see it grow between Audrey and Otto. What was it like for you developing a rapport with Robert prior to filming?
He's amazing. I absolutely love him. I want to do 1,000 films with him. I think he's so talented, so easy to work with, deeply collaborative and improvisational. So anyways, Robert's amazing. Sorry, I kind of missed that last little bit.
It's all good. Yes, you were saying that Robert was amazing and everything. And so I'm curious, how is he in real life in comparison to Otto?
I mean, he's not Otto. It's definitely a character he put on. He's the most kind, loving, can have any conversation, is not stagnant, and he's a really interesting, beautiful artist. So he created a really beautiful character.
Well, that's great. You got to have that relationship with him on set, because it's always good to hear that amongst actors. And so one of the things that I found really interesting about the film is Audrey's love of YouTube videos with animals. And I know you were talking about YouTube earlier with the DIY nature of her character, but what is it you think it is about the various animal videos she watches that she just really, why do you feel she loves those videos so much?
Well, I mean, Audrey is a character, and why do we write a character that has an affinity for watching animal videos if it's not some sort of conundrum of a question that all of us have the impetus for? So there's a giant impetus of developing your digital content therapist. What do you watch when you want to zone out? And everyone's now developing 1,000 flavors of their digital content activity that they want to disassociate, to feel safe, to zone out, to zone in. And the activity of watching animal videos is a giant one. This is a real human expression of experience right now. I think it's really sweet in a way, we need some like grounding, and I think animals can make us feel very like back to our bodies, back to the original state. It's also like looks nothing like our real life. So it's nice to enter something that looks completely different, that allows you to kind of set down your troubles, of your specific experience and enter someone else's.
Well, I think that's that really does feel like very much the heart of Audrey. So that's perfect. One other thing that I did find interesting about the film is we see a lot of driving from you, and we see you kind of humming random tunes. And so I'm curious, were those specific songs that you had in mind, or was that you just kind of going off of the cuff?
I No, that's just off the cuff. I sing all the time. I mean, I'm constantly talking to myself, singing to myself. So that was definitely a part that just naturally emerged as I was trying to be as sort of raw and just bass as humanly possible.
Gotcha. Okay. It was a sweet little touch, and I was curious if there was a deeper meaning to it, or if it was just something fun that you were adding to the character.
Yeah, it's something that emerged in our findings.
That's awesome. Well, before I let you go, I did want to also ask, we have you finally reuniting properly with Zack Snyder coming up for Rebel Moon. And so I'm curious, what can you tell me about that project?
Absolutely nothing. Just that I'm so excited. I mean, I'll like, Zach and I have got to work together a few times, and he's a good friend of mine, and it's nice to keep checking in and collaborating with dear friends, that you've known for a good long time. You can see how they're growing as an artist. You can support their journey. You can see how you're growing. The reminiscence is one of the most delicious conversations humans want to have. We just want to reminisce. And I think that space is such a nice space to collaborate in, like someone that you already have a pretty decent language with. And he's just making something super cool. So we just, I'm stoked to be a part of something that's really cool.
Since you mentioned that reminiscence factor, then, I mean, what is it like for you? How does it compare working on Rebel Moon now in comparison to, say, Sucker Punch a decade ago?
I mean, working on Sucker Punch is so fucking awesome. I mean, sorry, my language, but it was one of the best film experiences I ever had. I had just never been asked to do so many cool things, and then also have the belief instilled in me that I could do those things. Yeah, that was a very kind of groundbreaking moment in my journey as an actor. So it was pretty cool.
Well, I certainly look forward to hearing more about Rebel Moon when you or Zach can share it.
I'm very excited. I'm excited to share as well.
As well as Army of the Dead Las Vegas, whenever that finally.
I know, that's going to be so cool.
I'm excited to hear more about that, because that's a franchise I think has a lot of room to grow in interesting directions.